Hi, I'm Adam Natali, Director of SVA Theater at the School of Visual Arts. If you've never heard of SVA, we're a preeminent art and design college in New York City. Check the video description for more info. Since 2014, SVA Theater has hosted After School Special, the college's annual alumni film and animation festival. The festival is normally a series of free screenings followed by Q&As with alumni who are successfully working in the film industry. Even though we're unable to host in-person screenings this year, we're thrilled to be able to present interviews with over 25 alumni who've worked on a wide variety of feature films, television shows, documentaries, animated films, and more. All of our festival interviews will premiere here on YouTube during the week of September 21st. We're calling this our work from home edition of After School Special, and our guests are zooming in from all over the world, from Singapore and Germany to Canada and California. Tonight's Q&A is what we're calling a SVA Premieres Where Are They Now? Allow me to briefly explain. Every year since 2016, the Friday night centerpiece of After School Special has been a best of collection of work of that year's graduates called SVA Premieres. It's a highly selective program with approximately 20 graduating students chosen each year. These students get to travel to Los Angeles to tour film and animation studios, meet with major players in the industry, and to screen their films at a stunning theater in the heart of Hollywood. Since we can't screen the SVA Premieres Best of program this year, we're instead checking in with graduates who participated in SVA Premieres since its inception, all of whom are already experiencing major success in their field. They've worked on major films and series, and we'll provide info and links to their work in the description below. I hope you enjoyed tonight's Q&A. A full schedule of the After School Special 2020 interviews can be found at svatheater.com, but all videos will remain on YouTube following their premieres. And if you're interested in viewing past After School Special interviews, you can visit the School of Visual Arts' YouTube channel. Thanks for tuning in, and fingers crossed, we hope to see you in person at SVA Theater in the near future. Hi, I'd like to welcome Alejandra Alvarez, a 2017 graduate of SVA's BFA Computer Art, Computer Animation, and Visual Effects program, whose film, The Novice, made with Courtney Scriven, was shown in the second year of SVA Premieres. It's a great film that's racked up over 2 million views on YouTube, so I'd encourage you to check it out. We'll make sure that there's a link on this YouTube video. But since graduation, Alejandra has worked on several major films and television shows as a 3D animator and visual effects artist. Those films and shows include Avengers Infinity War, Godzilla King of the Monsters, Stranger Things, It Chapter 2, The Nutcracker and the Four Realms, Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle, and Zombieland. Most recently, she worked on Disney's The Call of the Wild and Amazon Prime's Tales from the Loop, both of which premiered earlier this year. So she's worked on a whole lot since graduating just about 3 years ago. So let's welcome Alejandra. Hey, Alejandra, how are you?
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So can we start out by you telling us a little bit about your SVA experience and about your experience as showing your film in SVA Premieres?
Yeah, sure. So I'm probably going to repeat a lot of stuff that people already know about SVA, but I want to make sure that it's said because it's really important. I think one of the things that I liked the most about my experience at SVA was that the animators had real experience in the industry and they were current. So I could see their work, I could look up to their work. I think that's something that is really important and I really loved about it. SVA also really made sure that I got a lot of exposure after I finished my film. Definitely the SVA Premieres program really helped me. I had a lot of fun, traveling with my friends and showing off my film in a theater. That was really amazing. But I also started to reach out to people when I graduated to work. And basically, the SVA premiere really put my name out there to be hired. And that's actually what ended up giving me my Avengers Endgame and Infinity War gig. So that's cool.
Oh,
Fun
so
fact.
yeah, that's definitely cool. I mean, it's like one of the biggest films in the past, decade.
It
So
was,
so
yeah.
tell us about that. So you made a connection via SVA premieres. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so basically, um, after the thesis showings at school, when we invite industry professionals to look at everybody's films and films are graded, MPC was there. MPC was my first ever, I guess, animation job. They were there, they watched the film, they liked it, and they offered me a job out of school. So I took it. However, a couple months after that, I got a call saying that the movies were getting pushed. It was originally supposed to be for Nutcracker. They went through a whole director change at the time, and everything was being pushed. It was my first job, so I freaked out a little, and I thought, I should probably look for something else in the meantime while that resolves. So I reached out and at this point I was at SVA premieres. So I was showing off my film to people, and I heard about Third Floor, and Previs was always an interest of mine. I love putting together the sequences. It's kind of the heart of every film. And I reached out to the Third Floor. I had no idea that the Third Floor had already been to the SVA premieres. But that was the answer that I received. As soon as I sent over my reel, she was like, "Oh, I just saw your movie at SVA premieres. That's awesome." And within a few days, I had the job.
And what film was that working on? Was that Avengers or?
That was for Avengers, yes.
Okay,
Avengers
that's
Endgame
incredible.
and Infinity War, yeah.
That's incredible. And I mean, so you've worked at several major visual effects studios. And for those who might not be familiar with visual effects studios, and many of us non-visual effects people aren't, Third Floor, MPC, and another one you've worked at, Frame Store, those are some of the top visual effects studios in the country. So in 3 years, you've worked at these studios. It's been great. Can you give us a sense, beyond those first few films and I've named so many others in your bio. Can you talk about sort of how your career has progressed since those first few films?
Yeah, sure. So Previs was a great experience, but I knew it was temporary to begin with because I already had my one contract with MPC. So as soon as my MPC contract came through and they had a specific date for me to go, I let my team at Third Floor know, and I left to go to Montreal. Basically, for the first year or so, I just worked on what I was told because I thought I'm entry level and I just want to do a good job with whatever I'm told. However, so first, my first ever film that I don't talk about too much was Justice League. I don't talk about it too much because I really hated the outcome, but that was my very first ever thing I did, was a face replacement of, that famous face replacement they did for Superman, because they like reshot some scenes after the movie was already shot, and he had a beard and they wanted people to take off his beard, so we just animated the second half of his face. That was my first that was my first gig ever. I don't talk about it. It's nowhere online. You won't find it, but it was kind of like I just wanted them to really like what I do. And they started to give me better tasks as time went on. But then I found myself in kind of a rut when I was working on Nutcracker, because they were changing directors and they didn't have a lot of shots for us to actually do. So I had a lot of downtime. I found this is when, like, one of the times when I really grew up a little bit as an animator, because I decided to just go out, and because I was in this office with all these other films that were being done. At the time, Godzilla was getting done. And I wasn't meant to go on Godzilla at first. But that's when I started, like, I messaged the director for Godzilla, the animation director, Spencer. And little did I know, he was an SVA alumni too. So we hit it off right away, and he told me he would put me on the film whenever there was an opening. Sure enough, eventually there was an opening, but I also was proactive about it because a lot of people wanted to go in the movie. So I also went and talked to my lead, Randy Link, who basically was fully responsible for getting me on the film because he requested me through. Anyway, long story short, be proactive about what you want to work on and things will come your way. I think it's very important to show like your interest in your place of work and not just sit down and do what you're told. As long as you still get your stuff done, you can be proactive about what you want to work on. Otherwise, you can find yourself kind of lost in the wheel of things.
I think that's a great piece of advice. So let's actually show, you have a reel, and I want you to talk through your reel, which shows some of the shots that you worked on in several of those, the television shows and films that we named.
Sure, this is, Zombieland was a funny thing. We were a really tiny project and we were only doing a tiny portion of the movie. But this was my favorite shot from it. It's just a zombie that walks off of the side of a building and just falls off. It's really, really short, but it was really fun to do. You can go ahead and play it. Yeah. This was a series of shots I got with two monsters colliding on Godzilla. And it was amazing for me. This was my very first assignment, actually. I started with the smaller shots in the beginning because they were trying to test how I would do. And then little by little, they just started giving me the whole sequence. And I ended up with this sequence of the two King Ghidorah and Rodan just colliding. And for me, that was one of my very first big assignments in animation, and I really enjoyed doing it. And then, yeah, then we followed up with Stranger Things, which was, I think to this day, was my favorite show to do. First of all, I'm a sucker for monsters. I love monsters. And Stranger Things was like not like heavy on reference at all. So everything that we did was just coming out of our heads. And obviously we were referencing certain things. But I really enjoyed the team I worked with. It was really strong. My supervisor was Yvon Jardel. He's a French guy. I'm pretty sure I mispronounced that, but he's awesome. Yeah, this was one of the very first shots I received. They liked what I did on it and they started giving me new stuff. This was when I was actually new at the company. I had just moved from MPC and I had been at MPC for about 2 years and 2 years and a half. And then I moved to Rodeo, and actually it was just 2 years. Yeah. And then I moved over to Rodeo, and this was one of the first. So they were really in a pinch. They had a lot of shots to get done, but they didn't trust me yet. So they started me off with smaller shots. But they were pleased, and they started giving me bigger ones, which I was really happy with. Oh, you can go ahead and play it. Yeah, this is also really short. The terrible thing about VFX is that your shots are originally longer than what you see in the movie, but they have like, which means that they have really long handles. So I really wish I had the shot itself, but MPC is terrible with sending you your actual, like your full length shots. So I haven't received that yet. So I just had to cut this off of the movie, and it's just really so short. This is one of my favorite ones that I did on Stranger Things, this roar. It was really fun. All these tentacles are separate rigs that I had to parent to the mouth, and yeah, all the collisions on the teeth were pretty fun. You can go ahead. Yeah. This was Tales from the Loop. This was one of my most recent TV shows that I worked on, and it was really fun. This was, I think, the tiniest team I've ever worked with, and it was really fun. It was really like, it was really fast paced. They didn't have a lot of time to do the shots, which I guess it's kind of the difference between TV and feature, where like when you're doing movies, you have like, you can do tons of revisions and stuff, but when you're doing TV, you're just kind of on a go. Like if they like an idea, they want you to finalize it in the next day or two. So that's kind of where we were. This was a really fun one because the robot is supposed to mimic what the little girl is doing, and kids are kind of like they have a little less balance than regular like adults, and it was a really fun clip. Yeah. This was the most challenging shot from Stranger Things that they gave me. It's a lot longer, but I only put in the length that I liked the most. This one was one of those shots. I mean, the monster has about 8 legs. I don't remember exactly because it's been about a year, but 8 or 9 legs, and it was really challenging. I mean, the rig was beautifully done. Everything was amazing, but this kind of shot is the one that really puts forth like where your workflow, like you have to have a really picky workflow for this shot to go smoothly. So ever since I did this shot, which was about a year ago, yeah, I've been working on my workflow. Every time I open a scene, every time I do a new animation, I'm constantly thinking about like everything that I'm like, all my rotation orders, everything that you have to set up in order for everything to go smoothly. It depends on each shot. It's very different. So it's kind of like you're always learning new things. Yeah, this was one of those like ones that kicked my butt. This shot, I mean, I'm ending the reel with this shot basically, and I did it. I mean, this shot it's not very mechanic heavy. It's not a very difficult shot to animate, but I mean, it was the last roar that Godzilla had in the whole movie after he's been like, you know, defeating all of these monsters, and it was a really cool moment for me. And I was really, really fortunate to be given this shot, and I think it would be a shame for me not to show it off. It was really fun. My lead was Randy Link for it, and I think he was one of those people who like really advanced my career. Not so much by advanced my career, I mean like in the way that I see animation. He showed me a lot of important lessons, one of which is communication. Like he was really good at communicating with the client and like reading. Sometimes when you're communicating with clients and they give you notes, they only send you a little paragraph, and he really like he knew how to interpret it in a way that like he knew how to interpret what the client was asking for in a way that no one else I knew how to do it. I would read the paragraph and I'd be like, okay, they mean that I should make the roar a little snappier. And then he reads the paragraph and he's like, no, that's not what that means. That means this, this, and this. And it was like, it's really great. Yeah.
That's great. Yep.
Oh, this is actually this is a fun one I did with one of my friends, Steven. He did the body and I did the face. And this was actually while I was at SVA, still studying. I hadn't done my thesis yet. This was my frame store internship. And it was really fun. I was lucky to have worked on the Gecko. You don't normally get to when you're in the internship, but it was a special occasion because it was Warren Buffett's birthday. So yeah, it was really fun.
That's great. Thanks for showing that. And so one of the more recent things you worked on, I mentioned earlier, was Disney's Call of the Wild, the Harrison Ford movie, which is on demand, but I think it'll eventually be on Disney Plus at some point. But it's a great film. It's based on the novel of the same name. And what's interesting about that, you actually got to go on set for that, which is really cool. And I don't know if a lot of people realize that some visual effects artists will go on set at some point. It can be pretty rare, but you got to go, and we have some photos from that we'd like to show. And if you want to talk about your experience a little bit with that.
I never realized the importance of going on set. But after doing this, I noticed like how much of an eye-opener it is, like how much it bridges the gap between like the team that's working on set and the team that's working on post-production. Because as post-production artists, all you receive is a video with a plate that some people shot, and you have to do your work over it. And we like to complain a lot about like, oh, you know, what if they just move that thing that way? We wouldn't have to edit all of this stuff out. Like we like to complain a lot about how much is wrong with the plates that we receive, but man, oh man, a lot of work goes into putting these films together, and a lot of work. Once you are there physically and you see it with your own eyes, you start to appreciate that team a lot more than you did before. So yeah, this is in LA Center Studios. Basically, the director of Call of the Wild, Chris Sanders, invited a couple of animators. It's me and another guy called Amr. Amr Sharaki, very nice guy. He invited us over to the on set because he wanted to basically work closer with the animators that were gonna animate the movie eventually in post-production. He wanted to for us to be there, and he also wanted to reshoot some of the stuff that he had gotten from the previous team because he wasn't happy with it. So he had us animate some sequences, and they were using, sorry, I'm stumbling a little bit, but they were using this program called Simulcam. I don't know if anyone has heard of it. For those of you who are not familiar with VFX, you definitely haven't. But it's basically a virtual camera, but it projects your animation onto the set. So you can see the dog's animation on set through the camera. So if you're doing moves, like if you're doing camera moves that have to follow like a person or a dog or something, and they're not real, they're actual CGI, then you have, like, you animate them ahead of time and you project them with your camera in space, and then you can react to their movements, and you have like real life, basically real life camera on following CGI characters, which is what we did. So we animated the dogs. We used some of the mocap actually for quadrupeds, which I was very impressed by because I definitely thought that it wasn't possible to do quadruped mocap, but they did it and it was nice. And yeah, this experience was amazing. I mean, not to mention that I met Harrison Ford. He was sitting behind my desk watching me animate for like 10 minutes, which is definitely a check in my lifetime. Yeah, so having notes from Chris was amazing. I love the way he digests your animation. He looks at your stuff and he doesn't say anything for long, and then he just grabs his sketchbook and shows you what he means. But he was just someone so inspiring to work with, and someone, I mean, whose work I look up to. I look up to all of the stuff he did on Lilo and Stitch and on How to Train Your Dragon. It's all amazing. So this was a one in a lifetime experience. And yeah, NPC was great. They flew us over. They gave us room and board. And so we were living really close to the studio, and we were just driving back and forth all the time. So this is what the photo shows you, what the stage looks like when they're first setting it up. So they set up, like, they're setting up all the fake snow ground. And then in the next picture, you can see they start bringing in all these trees. These are real life trees. They're not fake. I mean, maybe one or two of them might be fake to fill in some stuff, but they want to be real precise about the stuff they put in here. So yeah, and then on the next picture, you can see I got one with some lighting. So basically the sky and the background of all of these plates is going to be CGI. So they don't actually need to do lighting for the sky. They do it so that there's bounce lights on there's accurate bounce lights on the characters when they're filming them. So Harrison Ford's face will show off the bounce light from all of these lights that are later added on in CGI. So that was pretty cool, pretty rad. All that snow is fake. Yeah, so this was also fun. Fun fact, the main character of the movie is called Buck, and this is what he looked like before he had a bunch of redesigns. He was really cute. He still is. And then they brought in a couple of dogs for us to play with on set, which is not something that happens in the actual studio. This is remarkable for me because VFX studios usually, like, for example, the MPC studio in Montreal doesn't actually allow dogs in the studio, so we weren't, or any other animal really. So we weren't really, we didn't have this type of experience before, and it was really neat.
That's awesome. That's really cool that you got to be on set for this. So, you know, that was all pre-pandemic. Let's talk about, I know you've been working, which is great. Hopefully one day we'll get to go back to sets, all of us. That would be awesome. Gosh. But yeah. You know, we've all been home through this, and very fortunately, I know that you've been working on a few things. I don't know if you could talk about what they are specifically, because they're probably confidential projects. But if you can talk a little bit about the types of projects you're working on right now and how you're staying motivated during the pandemic, I'm sure people would love to hear that.
Yeah, sure. So the pandemic has definitely taken taken its toll for everybody, myself included. So basically, during Christmas time, it was the first time that I was going to take some time off. So I took a month and a half off to vacation because I hadn't since I graduated, and work-life balance is very important. So after I came back, the pandemic started. So I basically switched to freelance because out of necessity, also out of curiosity, because I've been wanting to actually try freelance for a while. But all of these cool like feature projects were coming in and I just never made the move. The pandemic kind of pushed me that way. And so I embraced it. Ever since, I've been working on a couple of different things, not too much. I've had a lot of downtime too. I worked on a music video for this really famous Latino singer, which is, you guys probably will not know who he is, but it's J Balvin. It already got millions of views, so it's pretty cool. But I was only on it for a little bit. So freelance is a lot different from what I'm used to, because I'm used to being like spending months on a project, and you know familiarize yourself with the teams and everything. For freelance, especially working remotely, you barely get to see anyone. I mean, sometimes people have their cameras on Zoom, but not always. And it's a lot shorter. So you get to familiarize yourself with the characters a lot less. However, there's a lot of perks. I mean, working from home is kind of cool. I mean, okay, there's a lot of cons to it, but if you're working from home and you're able to like set a routine for yourself, you're able to do so many things that you wouldn't otherwise. Like energy level wise, whenever I would get home from work, when I wasn't working from home, I would be dead. Like I barely had time to take my dog for a walk, and I would just plop on the bed or watch something. But now, like, I get to do a lot of different things. I mean, my one of the biggest pros, I think, from working from home is just that you can set your own schedule. So if you want to start in the afternoon, as long as you get your stuff done and you're there for the meetings, that's really all you need to do. It's really, really, really nice. I do look forward to eventually working at the studios again, but working from home for now works. But yeah, I worked on things since that I never imagined, like the music video. I never imagined that. I was never looking for a music video before, but it was really, really rewarding, and it was not really nice. It was a short turnaround. You didn't have to wait months to be able to show off your work. Same thing for, I also got to work recently for a company called Eidos in Montreal. They do AAA games. And I never imagined myself working for games before, but I did, and it was quite cool. Really, really nice work, really, really nice team. The pace is also a lot different in games than it is in everything else. So basically, I feel like so far I've had a little taste of quite a few things that I wasn't expecting to. So it's really nice.
And you're working from Texas right now, even though you're working with studios and projects that are coming from all over the world, actually. Do you want to show your work setup, even if it's not too pretty? And I think unlike MPC, you can take animals to the office, correct? So
that's true.
If you want to show it, you want to show us quickly, we'd
that
love
is
to
a
take
number one perk. Okay,
yeah.
I think she's laying down somewhere. So one of the ways I deal with my work stress is my dog. Okay, anyway, my home setup looks like this. I think one of the most important things for me is natural light. If you don't have natural light in your work setup, your eyes are gonna hurt a lot at the end of the day. And then Kita is somewhere. Let me just get her real quick. Kita, give me a pop. There she is.
Very cute. that's your work mate right now.
She's my desk mate, and she's super chill, and she knows when I'm working. I mean, she's already 3, so she's kind of used to me working all the time. But yeah, I really love her, and
Do you have any personal work you've been doing as well? Like, do you do any sort of art on the side for yourself?
Yeah, that's another thing that working from home is great for, because you're a little more efficient with your time. You're not traveling to places and you're not putting like time into commuting anywhere. So you have a little bit of extra time when you're at home. But yeah, I've been working on some personal stuff that I will release soon, hopefully. But I think it's really important to stay active, no matter whether or not you have a gig or not. It's really important to keep working and to keep yourself active at all times and engaged. So not just doing stuff catered to studios, but also cater it to yourself, so that you're always keeping yourself interested in your work and creating cool stuff.
Also, I'd love to talk about, you're a Latina woman working in the industry. Have you faced any challenges around that, or can you talk about your experiences as a Latina woman in the industry?
Sure. I actually, I mean, other than not seeing a lot of women, there aren't a lot of women in the industry overall. I mean, it's growing over time. At Framestore, there were no women in the team. Rodeo, there was one or two, myself included. So I guess that's one of the sort of odd things that you have to get used to. It kind of changes the dynamic a little bit, because I mean the social dynamic changes a little bit. I'm not sure how to explain how, but because I'm so used to it, it's already my norm. Hopefully that will change soon. I know by the time I left NBC, there were considerably like a lot of women there compared to how when I started. And as a Latino, I think actually it's beneficial for me, and I'll explain. Because I think Latinos overall, I have a sense that they're a little more social, a little more friendly, a little more smiley, a little more, have a little bit of salsa there somehow. And I think that's kind of lacking in an animator overall, or in a VFX artist, because you're sitting in your computer all the time. I think it's kind of great to just be a little more friendly, and that's really important, to just always engage with the people in the office, say hello every morning, just just make really good friendships, because we're going to be working on cool stuff together for a while. And I think that's that kind of stands out from the crowd, I guess, because everybody is so, it's more likely for people to be introverted when they're in this field. So I guess that's one of the things that has helped me.
I think that's great. You've offered a lot of pieces of advice throughout this interview. Is there anything that you'd like to leave, especially students or anyone who's looking to gain access into this industry? Any other final piece of advice you'd like to offer?
Wow, there's a lot of things I'd like to say, but the most important one for a student who is about to graduate, I guess, don't get stuck between jobs when you're actually in the field. So just stay active with your work, but also just be true to what you like to do. Be true to yourself. When you do personal projects, don't just cater them to specific studios where you want to go. Be true to yourself and what you like to do, and because that's the only way that you're going to create great stuff. You're going to create great, because you don't want to just make stuff for the sake of making stuff. You want to actually make stuff that speaks to people, and I think that's the best way to do it. I think there's a lot of great stuff coming from people who work honestly from their heart.
I think that's a beautiful sentiment and a wonderful thing to leave students with. Congratulations on all of your success. I'm so thrilled that you've been able to work on such major films and shows. And we've mentioned so many things that have recently come out online or on very major platforms that can be easily accessed right now. So I hope everyone will check them out. I wish you all the best and more success to come. And I want to thank you so much for being here today with us. So great having you, Alejandra, and we'll hope to see you soon.
Thank you for your time.
Bye.
You too. Bye.
Hi, I'd like to welcome Julian De Roche, 2016 graduate of SVA's BFA Computer Art, Computer Animation, and Visual Effects program. His thesis film, Time Warped, was shown in year 1 of SVA premieres. Since graduation, Julian has worked as a visual effects digital compositor on several commercials, films, and television shows, including Genius, Elementary, The Good Fight, 5 Feet Apart, Fosse Verdon, Motherless Brooklyn, Dickinson, and The Purge. Pretty amazing. He's got a long list. He's only been out of school a few years. In 2020 alone, his work can be seen on Little America on Apple TV+, Timmy Failure on Disney+, The Plot Against America on HBO, P-Valley on Stars, and Spike Lee's Da 5 Bloods on Netflix. So let's welcome Julian De Roche. Hey, Julian, how are you?
Hi, thanks, Adam. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. So
we're thrilled to have you. So let's start out. If you can tell everyone a little bit about your experience at SVA, you know, what it was like going through the BFA Computer Art program.
yes, so I graduated 2016, May 2016. So I came in 2012, and I enjoyed my time there. I was in BFA Computer Art. I started the first 2 years you do visual effects and animation, and then the next 2 years you branch off to whatever you want to do. Obviously, I went into visual effects, and yeah, I thought it was pretty great, and it helped me a ton. It helped me a ton and helped me get to where I am now. So, yeah.
That's great. And so, as I mentioned, you were a part of year 1 of SVA premieres. What was that program like for you when we took you out to Los Angeles?
Oh yeah, that was it was unexpected for me, but that was like a eye-opening experience with the industry, because I got to talk to a bunch of industry professionals, especially after our theses were shown in the theater. So yeah, so I think I think we talked to we visited a couple different studios like DreamWorks, and I know we got to see Rebecca Sugar, who worked on Steven Universe, so that was pretty great. So
yeah, Rebecca Sugar is one of our really significant alumni. She created Steven Universe, and so that's great that you got to meet her. I'm sure not many people can say that. So, you know, beyond your premieres experience, after that, you know, you just graduated, and it looks like your career pretty much took off right after graduation. How did you land your first few jobs?
So after I graduated, I actually landed an internship at Frame Store. So right out of school, I started working, and I was there for about 2 to 3 months, and then they put me on as freelance for a couple more months. Then after that, I was just doing freelance after freelance job, and yeah, and then eventually where I am today, I'm working a full-time staff job at the Molecule. So that's how I got here.
And the Molecule, we have a lot of alumni that work over at the Molecule. Someone else who's doing one of our Q&As this week, and it was founded by Luke DiTomaso, who is an alum as well. So it's really cool that you landed there. And clearly they do a lot of different projects, from film to television to commercials. You have a reel that I'd like to show. It's really quick, and it's a minute long, but it gives a good sense of what you've worked on and the kind of work you do. It's really interesting because we were watching it kind of in slow-mo to see the changes from the initial shot, and then once you worked on the shot afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
And it's such minutia, but let's show the reel. And if you want to tell people about it as we're watching, things go by pretty quickly, but whatever you want to talk about being a digital compositor would be great.
Okay. So yeah, this was just like a sequence in Motherless Brooklyn. There was a like a drive-by sequence where it was a car chase. This is a couple of shots from Frame Store commercial reel, and this is my thesis. Sorry, it goes by so fast, but uh, these are a couple of commercials. This was Elementary from The Molecule, a couple of screen replacements, some Motherless Brooklyn that I worked on last year. This new show, Little America on Apple, The Purge, which I was doing a bunch of photo replacements. We had to do rig removal for The Good Fight, and Fosse Vernon, there was like a bracelet on her hand that would always fall off that I had to put back on.
It's really cool, and you don't necessarily think that the sort of the director would catch that kind of thing, but it's crazy. And you know, I'm sure a lot of money is spent putting bracelets and rings on fingers that were there at one point and not there the next.
I mean, yeah, it's like all of the like things that you don't notice that we have to like fix. It's like I think we call them like invisible effects. So like, yeah. So that's
Well,
what we usually.
And for stuff like that, like invisible effects, I mean, who tells you those things? Like, do you get the notes from the directors and the assistant directors, or is it stuff that, you know, you have to watch for?
So we mostly get it from the client side, but like sometimes they won't like really notice something, and we notice it, and we let them know if this is supposed to be that way, and if it isn't, then we have to go back and fix it. So.
And in that reel, I know it was moving so fast, but the dinosaur and like the alien spaceships, that was from your undergraduate thesis project.
Yeah.
So if you want to talk a little bit about that, because those effects were incredible, especially, you know, for someone coming out of an undergraduate program. Is right now, you know, it doesn't look like you're creating the big spaceships or anything yet, but is that sort of the end goal for you to create those types of visual effects?
Yeah, so like that was my personal thesis. So I love doing that stuff. Right now I'm not doing that type of work right now, but eventually I want to move on to like bigger and bigger stuff, and like possibly bigger films like the Marvel type stuff. So like Marvel, like superhero like sci-fi type stuff, and work on just like CG and character integration. So that's eventually the end goal.
So looking at the projects you have worked on, even though there aren't the big special effects blockbusters on the list, I mean, you've worked on some really terrific films and shows. I mean, Fosse Verdon, you know, is an Emmy and Golden Globe nominated series. Motherless Brooklyn, Golden Globe nominee as well. Was there any piece that you really enjoyed working on, whether it was because of the piece itself or because of the sequence that you were working on?
Yeah, I'd have to say it's definitely Motherless Brooklyn. There's in the film there's a car chase sequence where it was just basically all shot on green screen, and we just had to make it look like it was just shot in like a 1950s Brooklyn. So that was pretty fun to do. That took like about like 2 or 3 months total. So yeah, that was fun.
And how long is that chase sequence? Probably like no longer than 2 to 5 minutes.
Yeah, it was like 2 to 5 minutes. So, but I loved every minute of it. So
that's awesome, and it's great. It's great that you're working consistently, especially through the pandemic. Can you tell us a little bit, since you're still at the Molecule and you're still working, can you talk a little bit about any of the projects you're currently assigned to?
Yeah, probably there's like one that I'm really working on right now, which is Genius season 3. I think that deals with Aretha Franklin, but yeah, that's what I'm working on right now. So
and so, you know, you mentioned your setup has like multiple monitors and you don't have to necessarily turn the camera around and show us, but how, you know, how are you staying motivated? Are you like keeping certain hours for yourself, and how are you communicating with your colleagues as well?
Yeah, so like I won't lie, it's harder to stay motivated working from home because you don't have a like your coworkers next to you to like ask questions or just like talk to if you just wanted to chat a bit. So that's tough, but we still communicate. We still have our hours that we usually do if we were in office. So we keep in contact with Slack. So if we have questions or we need to um, just ask about something, then we use Slack to communicate. So that's how we've been doing it.
Just because this is, you know, a topic that is really important to discuss right now, I'd love to hear about your experience as a Black man in the visual effects industry, whether you faced challenges in the past or just, you know, just your whole experience since you've been out of college and working.
Mm. For me, luckily, I haven't really dealt with like any negatives as a Black man in the visual effects industry, which I don't know about everybody else. I can't speak for everybody, but like for me, I'm lucky that I've had a good experience, especially at the Molecule. Like I feel very welcomed and I've had no issues. So, but
That's
yeah.
good to hear.
Mm.
Any, you know, since you've only been out of school about 4 years now, any advice you give to students who are coming out of school or to people in general who are looking to get into this industry? Suggestions, thoughts?
Well, I'd say just like if you're at SVA right now, just like listen to what your teachers say because most of them are probably industry professionals. But besides that, just try to be proactive and learn on your own because the more you're trying to learn and like uh, on top of what you're learning at school, the better you are, like the better chances you have at getting that job and being better than the like everybody else that's going for that job. So that's what I would say.
Thanks. I don't know, do you have a website or anything where we can keep an eye on your work? I know your IMDb profile is pretty up to date, but any other place where we can, is there any place we can check out Time Warped? Is that online anywhere?
Yeah, so yes, if you you could find me on Vimeo if you type in my name, Julian De Roche, and that's where you could find my thesis, Time Warped, but also my website, julianderoche.com. So
Awesome. Well, we'll put that in the YouTube information below. I want to thank you so much for being here, Julian. I'm thrilled that you've been working really consistently on these terrific projects. And I can't wait to see, you know, what comes down the line. And I wish you the best of luck and continued success. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, Adam. It's been a pleasure.
Have a good night. Bye.
You too. Bye.
I'd like to welcome Sarika Prasad, a 2019 graduate of SVA's BFA Computer Art, Computer Animation, and Visual Effects program, whose thesis film, Papito, created with Kenny Rosen, was shown in year 4 of SVA premieres. Since graduation, Sarika has worked as a lighting and compositing artist for Hornet, and she's now at Nickelodeon, where she's worked on the Nick Jr. shows The Adventures of Paddington, Paw Patrol, and Bubble Guppies. So let's welcome Sarika. Hey, how are you, Sarika?
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So I'd love you to start by telling us a little bit about your experience while at SVA.
Well, I was pretty blessed to have a good experience. I sort of landed in computer art by accident. I meant to apply for design, and I thought computer art included digital design. And then they showed the thesis films that accepted students there, and I was like, that's terrifying, but also way cooler. So I stuck around, and it's been hard, but really rewarding to learn about this from scratch.
That's so interesting. I mean, was it like almost a mistake on your application, or?
No, it was 100% a mistake on my application. I can't read.
Well, I mean, your work, Pepito, in which was shown at SVA premieres, it's a collaborative project with Kenny Rosen. It's a beautiful piece, and I know it got a lot of attention. How was your experience at SVA premieres?
It was a lot of fun. It was so strange because I didn't think much of my film. I just really fell in love with the process of designing the characters and lighting. And what surprised me the most was just like people kind of felt the love that we put into the film. And I had all these like industry professionals and alumni that I look up to just coming to me and being like, your film was so great. And yeah, that was like mind-blowing.
Did it lead to any, were there any like jobs or connections that came from that? Because you've been working pretty consistently since graduation.
Yeah, the offer for Nick Jr. came in before SVA premieres, but it was really cool meeting the LA team that works on the actual shows, whereas Nick, like New York, they work on the promotional stuff. So that was really cool.
So, and you're in the New York office for Nick Jr. So is that mainly what you're working on, the promos for the shows, or are you working on the actual shows as well?
We're working on the promos, things like those little 5-second bumpers, which is like, we'll be right back, or only on Nick Jr. So they're very small, but there's a lot more fun that we can have with the way we do those. And sorry?
About how big is the team that works on each of those?
For the Nick Jr. team, there's like about 40 of us.
Okay.
And we're split up into like YouTube and the Noggin, like content for the Noggin app, and then like on-air productions too.
And one of your other cohorts is Andy Tai, who's also a part of this video. So you're both working together. So I'd love to show a little bit of your work. We have a minute-long reel here that we're going to show. And if you just want to talk through your work in general as we're seeing this, people are going to recognize a lot of the characters and a lot of the shows. And there's even stuff from like Ugly Dolls, which was a film from earlier this year or late last year. That was not Nickelodeon, but again, you know, it's a promo. But let's take a look at your reel. So here we see Paddington. But tell us a little bit about what you do on these pieces.
I do like lighting and compositing, which is I just put the lights in and I make the outputted images look pretty, and I like put all of that together. And it's really fun to like put characters into real life situations, because especially when kids are watching, like I know when I was a kid, I was watching these kinds of things. I'm just like, they're right there. Yeah, this is some of my earlier work from in school.
And I know that there's a clip from Pepito coming up right there,
yeah,
right?
It's like one of the opening shots where the lighting changes a lot. I had a lot of fun with that, creating different settings. And there's Paddington.
Yeah, it's really cool work. And in like one of these bumpers that you're like is 5 or 10 seconds, about how long from start to finish do those pieces take?
It's usually like a week or two, because there's like a bunch of different versions that we have to make. Because it's like today at 9, tomorrow at 9, like right now, next, things like that. And there's a whole bureaucracy of approval that they need to go through. It's a lot of behind the scenes work.
So is there any piece in particular that you've really enjoyed working on so far?
There's that one in my reel called Secret Agent Nani. And I got to have a lot of fun with the lights, like the lasers just like bouncing off of him, and like camera angle was really cool. And it was just a fun challenge to work on. I mentioned it earlier, but I also like compositing the CG characters into live action footage as well.
And so that Secret Agent Nani, that's like a Bubble Guppies character, correct?
Yeah, it was a promotional, it was like yeah, it was a promotional thing for that particular episode in the season. Like each episode had its own custom promotional thing, and that was the one that I worked on.
Got it. Do you actually, I mean, these are Nick Jr. shows, but do you watch them? Like, do you ever watch the shows?
I wish, but I don't have cable, so
Okay.
yeah.
They can't even give you like the app for Nick Jr. or Noggin or anything like that. It's funny. So you mentioned, you know, the office for Nick Jr.'s in Times Square, and you were working there pre-pandemic, but now you've been working from home during the pandemic. Can you talk about that transition and how it's been?
Yeah, the biggest thing about the transition that's impacted me is just like I miss my coworkers so much. I was so lucky to have a good team, and we would get lunch together on Fridays, and or every day, but we would eat out on Fridays, and it was so nice just being able to walk over and during downtime and just chat a little bit or ask for help. Yeah, that's the main thing that I miss. The main thing that I don't miss is the commute.
Mm-hmm.
I do not like Times Square, especially not in the summer, like afternoons as it gets dark and everyone and their mom is flocking.
Have you been down to Times Square since the pandemic at all?
Like during the height of it, when nobody was there, my brother and I, we actually took a drive to Manhattan. We like drove around just to see an abandoned Times Square because that was novel.
It's still pretty empty, I have to tell you. It's really eerie. It's very weird. But so, you know, since you've been working from home, you know, and we're sort of in your workstation right now, which for most people is their entire apartment in Manhattan. You know, are you keeping the same hours? Are you able to stay motivated? Are you chatting with coworkers? What's the sort of general day look like for you?
Well, right now I'm actually in between projects, so I have a lot of free time on my hand. And I've been doing some personal work, but I do try to keep the same hours. It's very easy to just slip into nocturnal mode. But yeah, like I've just been writing a lot and designing characters for a piece that I'm hopefully going to be collaborating with a friend on.
And that's your personal work?
Yeah, that's my personal work.
If you want to, can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, it was it's actually inspired by like a poem that my friend sent me. It's like very sad and angsty, which is not that I'm a sad and angsty person, but it's just a nice change of tone from Nick Jr.'s like happy-go-lucky type shows, and I would really like to experiment more with like melancholy lighting and darkness and stuff. So I'm looking forward to that a lot.
Well, sad and angsty right now are perfect emotions to be feeling during a pandemic. So we get it, but it sounds really interesting. And, you know, hopefully you'll keep us abreast of how that project comes along. You know, in going back to like working in an office and having, you know, like you said about, you know, 40 coworkers, whether at Nick Jr. or elsewhere, I'd love for you to sort of encapsulate your experience being a woman of color in the industry, and if there have ever been any issues or challenges around that.
I don't think I've had any direct challenges, like being a woman, but I did notice like out of the entire team, or at least the parts of the teams that I work with, I'm like the only person of like South Asian descent. At least while I was there. I don't know who's on now.
Sure.
Yeah. But it wasn't right like a thing. I just noticed that. But I can definitely say that the culture in the studios that I've worked in, it's definitely male-led, like majority male-led, and yeah, there's definitely a bro culture where like they talk about football and the stock market and stuff like that. I'm just like I have to channel my dad sometimes, and it's
Oh no.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
I hear
it's
you.
not it's okay. It's definitely getting better, and there haven't been, at least for me, haven't been any pressing issues about that.
That have come up. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, do you belong? I know you're not specifically in like an animator, but do you belong to any sort of affinity groups like Women in Animation or anything like that?
Yeah, I am a part of Women in Animation, and
Oh,
also Animation, which is like a space for the LGBT animators. So
and that was called Panimation?
yeah,
Cool. And is it sort of similar to Women in Animation where they, there's gatherings and there's, events and stuff like that?
yeah, it's just like basically people just trying to lift each other up, looking out for each other.
That's great. I'm glad you mentioned that. I haven't heard anyone else discuss it. So, with those groups, being involved with those, I'm sure you'd recommend that to other people. Is there any other advice that you'd give to either students who are pursuing this career or people who are, like fresh out of college who are looking to break into this industry?
Yeah, I would just say like put all your love into it, go hard. I know definitely at school there were people who would bad talk you if you were doing well, um, and others notice. So like you'll definitely gain some enemies as you gain traction, but as long as you like love what you're doing, that'll show through and you'll get recognized for it. So yeah, pretty much
That's
my
great.
advice.
Well, thank you for that. And I'm glad you're doing well, and I'm glad that you've been working even though you're in between projects right now. It's really cool work that you're doing, and I'm glad to see that you're, excited about that work as well. So, keep us abreast with what you're up to, especially that personal project that you mentioned.
Of course.
And it'll be great to see where you go from here. So thanks so much for being here, Sarika, and be well.
All right, thank you. Thank you again for having me.
Of course. Bye now. I'd like to welcome Andy Tai, a 2018 graduate of SVA's BFA Computer Art, Computer Animation, and Visual Effects program, whose thesis film, A Long Way From Home, made with Eduardo Enriquez, was shown in year 3 of SVA premieres and went on to win an Independent Shorts Award later that year. Since graduation, Andy has worked as a freelance CG generalist at Aardman Nathan Love, Wyden and Kennedy, and Hornet. And since last year, he's been working at Nickelodeon. I'm excited to hear what he's been working on. So let's welcome Andy. Hey, Andy, how are you?
Hello. How are you,
So I'm glad to hear that you've been working and you landed at Nickelodeon. That's pretty awesome. But I'd like to first start with having you tell us a little bit about your SVA experience as an undergrad.
I think I had a pretty nice experience. I think freshman year, I didn't have like the classes that I wanted, like the teachers that I wanted, because you can't really choose. But I did the best I could in every class, and then I think just get the best from every experience that I can grab on. And overall, it's pretty smooth. And by junior year, I figured out what I want to do, which is lighting. So I just excelled in that specific area. And then, yeah, and then my thesis, Long Way From Home, is everything that I wanted to make. And then it happened with the help of Eduardo, my partner. So I'm really grateful.
Yeah, I remember that film. It was a cowboy flick, right?
Yeah, it's like a Western and then a samurai.
It was great. I was so glad to see it won an award after graduation. Did you just submit it to a festival, or how did that come about?
I think computer art program in SVA, they just submitted in, you know, undergrad, they just submitted to a lot of different festivals, like all the work, everyone's thesis, you know, and then see which ones get.
And that was the film that we showed at SVA premieres. So, you know, can you tell us a little bit about your experience with premieres when we took you to Hollywood?
I didn't expect it to be that, what's the word, man? Like royal?
Big.
I don't know. It's like, yeah. Well, like everyone's wearing suits and stuff and there's champagne. Yeah. Yeah. It's
Well,
it's a nice experience.
We have to enhance the networking somehow, you know. I mean, did you meet anyone at you know networking that was like? Did anyone sort of any jobs come out of that for you, or?
Yeah, I think it did. It did lead to like a few jobs that I had. Someone contacted me because they were able to watch my thesis, you know, to like spread the word.
That's great. And I've seen, you know, you've worked pretty consistently since graduation, freelancing and going to some different studios, but those are, you know, big studios and other like advertising companies. Can you talk about your career since graduation?
So right after I graduated, I was pretty lucky that I got like a consistent booking through different studios. I was first at Nathan Love, and then no, I was first at Roof Studio, and I went to Nathan Love, and after that I went to Hornet, and then to Brand New School. Just like I was jumping through all the different studios because I also wanted to see like how each different studio work and like what their style is. So just to like get a feel, and then like the how do you call that? Downtime came, and then there was like no work for me for a month. So then I started to find like my own clients, which leads to like side projects. And then later on, I got into Nickelodeon. I was like permalancing, which is like freelance, but you're not signed as a, you know, actual worker, but you're there for a long time. Yeah, I'm still there, but I'm going to Nathan again in October.
Okay. Can you tell us what you worked on while at Nickelodeon? I don't know if you're allowed to say.
Yeah, of course. I worked on Blue's Clues. I was there first for Blue's Clues. Actually, Ryan. Do you guys know Ryan? He's like a little young YouTube star. And he like reviewed toys.
Some of our viewers surely will.
Some like Nickelodeon stuff. Yeah, and I made like a weird door and had like there's like a bowl that has like weird foam coming out. I was simulating. Yeah. But I think they never used it. Oh wait, no, they did use it, but yeah, I can't find it. And then I worked on Blue's Clues. If you guys know Blue's Clues, yeah, they turned it. It was in 2D, and then they turned it into 3D, so it's now in CG. And then Paddington as well, and like all the kids show. It's like I'm in Nickelodeon Junior, so Nick Junior. It's like
got it. Okay.
Yeah, the younger.
So the Paddington television show, not the movie.
Yeah. The Paddington. Yeah, it's pretty like it's like the textures and stuff is very nice. Lighting is very nice too. That show. It's a fun show to work on. But like
that's awesome.
Here in New York, we only do the you know, like the bumpers, like the beginning and then like the middle, you know, the end, not like on the actual. Yeah. Get to like make them more beautiful because it's kind of like commercial for the shows, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
So we actually have some photos and video of some stuff that you've worked on, and I know that you mentioned to me before this that some of this stuff are either personal projects or were like freelance projects for other clients. So if you want to tell us a little bit about that, we'll look at the photos first and then show some video. We're gonna throw those up. So
this is my personal work. like after graduation, whenever I have free time, I would try to like think of ideas. And this one is just flowers put on like a electrocution chair. I don't know. There's like some metaphor, like we're killing plants or something, and I try to like light it very nice. Yeah, it's just for fun, but yeah.
That's cool. I mean, it's cool. It's cool work. Do
like
you ever
studying light,
Yeah. I mean, we can go to the next photo. Do you ever, I mean, these are really beautiful images. Do you ever like print them and sell them, or they're really just for you?
Oh man, I mean, if someone wants to buy them, sure, but I don't think anyone would want to buy them. Yeah. This one is, yeah. I just had this image in my brain. Oh, yeah, this one. It's wait, what's that genre of art? The Dali.
Like Dali, yeah, like yeah, I'm
Yeah.
blanking on but I know what you're talking about.
Man, yeah, it was start with a S, no, P.
Surrealism, yeah.
No, S.
Surrealism.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's surrealism. Yeah, I just thought of it and just tried to make some sort of CG surrealism.
And then the last photo that we got.
Yeah.
This is like another
This one,
study in lighting.
Yeah. It's kind of based on a song by a Cantonese band called Beyond, and I try to imagine like what their album cover might be for that song, and this is what I came up with. The song title means Cold Rain Night. Yeah. In English.
It's very cool. I mean, I think you underestimate. I think people would buy your work if you printed these. They're really great. I think so. Or you could sell them. This is their album cover. Let's show some of the videos that you've created. We're gonna skip to that, and they're more like movement videos, and you can tell us a little bit about those.
Mm-hmm. So these are all like side projects, what I call them. It's like I have my studio, like 10 to 7 is like studio work, and then after 7 I might pick up some other projects, and those previously were like for ASAP Rocky for his merchandising advertisement on Instagram, like
That's
scanning
awesome.
stuff and then putting it together. Yeah.
And we have one more thing
Basically,
where it sort of demonstrates your work more specifically. So we're gonna throw that up, and it shows what you do as a lighting artist in CG. So it's basically a breakdown. If you kind of want to tell us, we're gonna play it through, and it shows the lighting that you've added to it. But if you want to talk about how you created this.
So I made this during the pandemic in Bangkok because I was stuck there for 5 months. And then it was like right at the beginning, it was like during January, like New York was still fine. And I made this because like China was like, so it's like a fun work relating to the event. And then, so what I would normally do is get like these models and with all the textures, and then I would add lights in it. So yeah, this is just a sky dome, which is like a flat lighting, and then here we starts to add more light. And then the next one is some volumetric to give it more depth, and like more interest. And the last step is to composite it to like add in fire, the effects, and some lens distortion or something, to make it more beautiful. This is what I do.
That's great. No, it's very cool.
Cool.
So, you showed us a bit of your personal work, a bit of your freelance work, and we heard about the other work that you've done. Has there been any like piece that you've worked on, whether it be, a freelance job or something else that you really enjoyed working on so far?
Yeah, there have been like a side project that I really loved, but I can't show it because it's like a pitch for a feature film and it's still going on. So I could, but like everything went smoothly, and then the director is nice. you know, and yeah, I think when you have good clients, those are the best work, you know. Yeah, good client is important.
Have you worked on any films so far, or would this be your first?
Like feature film? I mean,
Yeah.
no, that was just a pitch. Yeah, I haven't worked
Okay.
on feature films because in New York there's not much feature film production in CG. We mostly do like commercial and stuff. Yeah.
Sure.
So if I want to do
And
feature, I'll have to like go to Montreal or like LA and stuff.
got it. But you
Yeah.
know, that being said, everyone's working remotely now, and you just mentioned you were
Yeah,
stuck
true,
in
that's true.
stuck in Bangkok for 5 months, but you were still
Yeah.
working. So can you tell us a little bit about how you've been working during the pandemic, and were you working when you were out in Bangkok, even though you were stuck there?
Yeah. So like, because I had side projects from before the pandemic happened, when I was trapped at Bangkok, because of time difference, I can't work with studios here in New York. So I had to still pay rent in New York. So I had to like rely on my side projects. And it's great that I have my side projects, or else I'll be broke. Yeah. So
But
like
how
they
did you
still give me like, oh
how
yeah,
did you
it's just work
stay
from home,
motivated?
you know?
Yeah.
Oh, how, man, if you have to pay rent, you gotta, you know, pay rent, man. You gotta yeah. So like, and I was lucky enough that I made the connection before that they still have like jobs again for me. Yeah. So I was able to still work while in Bangkok. Yeah.
So you know, this is something I've asked several people in your industry, but I'd be interested to hear your take. You know, as a person of color, have you experienced any issues in your industry, or has it generally been okay for you thus far?
I think it's okay for me. Yeah, I think there's not much like discrimination. Yeah, I haven't felt anything crazy. I think in almost every industry, well, I don't know, just in my industry personally, I feel that it's all about like who you are, like how nice you are, and if you have the skills and the talent and the motivation to do what you want and the work ethic, you know, yeah, you need to like just don't be an asshole. That's good advice, man.
It's very good advice, and that actually leads to my last question, which, you know, I was going. It's great. No, any piece of advice for either students or people who are looking to get involved in this field, I think that's a great piece of advice. But if you want to expand on it and offer anything else, any words of wisdom.
I think in the CG industry, a very big factor is how nice you are, like how people look at you, because it's a pretty small industry and we know everyone. So word spreads pretty fast if, you know, you're not nice or being, you know. So to people who want to come into the CG, dude, there's so many tutorials online. You can start there. You can come to SVA. It's a great school. It got me where I wanted. Like everything I wanted to learn, I got it from SVA. So I'm happy with it. You can, you know, there's like a lot of ways to enter my industry. And for the students, I'd say like figure out what you want to do in CG and focus on it. If you want to be a generalist, just learn everything you can while you're in school, because that's the best time to, you know, to learn. Yeah. Now I don't have much time to learn. I have to learn while I'm working. Yeah.
I think that's great advice. Before we go, can we see your workspace?
Oh,
And
yeah.
and if you have any office mates, whether they be roommates or pets or otherwise.
This is Momoko. Momoko.
Sleeping on the job.
Is a Shiba Inu. Yeah. And this is like my setup for my workspace. It's just like my laptop and another screen and Wacom tablet, you know. It's nothing fancy. I need to upgrade my stuff, man.
Well, that's
to be
cool.
able to
And
do like, yeah.
I'm glad you've been working really consistently. And I'm glad you're doing okay. I'm glad you got back from Bangkok after being stuck for so long.
Thank you. Yes.
And
it's a crazy trip, man. It was like 48 hours.
So So how long was your trip supposed to be, and how long did it become?
Oh, it was supposed to be 48 hours. And it was 48 hours.
And 5 months
Yeah.
later, you're back.
Yeah, 5 months
Well,
later.
I'm glad you're safe and sound.
Wait, sorry. Yeah, it was supposed to be just like 2 months, and then became like 5 months.
Okay. Well, like I said, I'm glad you're safe and sound. I'm glad you're working. I want to thank you for your time. Keep us up to date what you've been working on, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Adam, for having me.
Yeah. Hi, I'd like to welcome Kristen Scarborough, a 2017 graduate of SVA's BFA Computer Art, Computer Animation, and Visual Effects program. His film Playground Warfare was shown in the second year of SVA premieres. Since graduation, Kristen has worked on several major films and television shows as an animator and layout artist, including Genlock, Ruby, and Doolittle. Most recently, he worked on Disney's The Call of the Wild and Artemis Fowl, both of which premiered earlier this year, and Jungle Cruise, which is slated for release in 2021. So let's welcome Kristen. Hey, Kristen, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good, good. Thanks so much for being here. So I'd love to start first with your SVA experience, if you could talk a little bit about that. And then at the end, after graduation, we took you to LA to be a part of the SVA Premieres program. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your experience with that as well.
Well, I started SVA in 2013, and it was quite an experience for me. Being in New York, that was like one of the a major hub about the film industry, and a lot of commercial houses were in the area too. So I did notice that a lot of my teachers were actually working nearby, like working on films or television shows or commercials. So that made me feel like I was really in the heart of the industry, where I was in New York. So yeah, that was a good experience for me. Yeah.
And then, like I said, you know, we showed your thesis film, Playground Warfare, in the second iteration of SVA premieres. So you got to go to Los Angeles with some other recent alumni. Can you talk about that experience and if it helped propel your career?
Yeah, so my film was chosen to be part of the second SVA premieres in LA. And yeah, that was a fun experience for me. That was my first time in LA, seeing where a lot of these movies are made in Hollywood. I got to go on a few field trips to different studios, and I got to talk to different alumni from SVA. And it was in talking to one of these alumni that I decided I wanted to be a previs and layout artist, because before then I wanted to do animation. But after talking to this alumni, he made me realize that previs and layout sounds a little bit more up my alley. So it was after that I switched to previs and layout. I applied to a few studios, and then I got accepted to my first major job, my first major film job.
That's great to hear. So just for the non-animators who are watching this, can you describe what previs and layout involves?
Previs is short for pre-visualization, and that is the planning out of shots before they are filmed or animated in a 3D space on the computer.
And layout goes along with that as well?
Yes, they're used interchangeably a lot. So you'll have to ask the studio that you're working at what word they're using.
That's funny. So you've worked, speaking of studios, you've worked at several major visual effects studios, including the Third Floor and MPC. Can you sort of give us a sense of how your career has progressed since graduation? Were you going from studio to studio? Were you working freelance on different films and television shows?
Well, yeah, so my first major job was in LA at the Third Floor, and I worked on a few films there. And then after that, I got hired for a job in Texas at Rooster Teeth Animation. And so my first job, I was working on live action films. My second job, I was working on animations. And then my third job, which was MPC in Montreal, I went back to live action. And then my fourth job, which is right now here in Toronto, I am working on animations again. So I do have a preference for animation, but I can do either or, you know, I like them both.
Well, and I think we actually have your reel. It's mostly animation, but and it shows a little bit of your thesis work. So we're going to show your reel, and I'd love for you to tell the audience what they're seeing as we watch it. So we're going to bring that up, and go ahead, take it away.
Okay. So this is a scene I worked on at Rooster Teeth. The show is called Genlock. I was the one who planned out the shots in this scene. I was given some storyboards and was told to block it out in 3D. So that's exactly what I did. The camera placements and where the characters got, where they run to, all of that was planned out by me.
And you said that this show is available on roosterteeth.com, that it's a web series.
Yes. And this is the first shot I worked on in my thesis film. This is just some class work I did. This is a weight exercise, just to show how heavy the car is. I also worked on this scene at Rooster Teeth. This scene took several weeks to make. Originally, it was supposed to be several shots, but the director decided that he wanted it to be like one long continuous scene. So it was up to me to do that. Oh, I worked on this shot as part of Anim Squad. It's an online school. And I worked on this after graduating. I wanted an extra dialogue piece to put in my reel. This is another shot from my thesis film, one of my favorites to work on. This is another class assignment. And this is a personal project that I worked on during college.
It's kind of crazy. I mean, the personal project looks insanely professional. I know that we've graduated several, top visual effects people from your program, and it's great to hear how your career has progressed so far. Is there any favorite project that you've worked on, whether it be a particular film or show, or even a particular scene that you've worked on? Any favorites amongst your list so far?
Well, my two favorite projects would be Genlock, which you saw a lot of that in my reel, and the one that I'm working on right now, which I am looking forward to seeing, but I really can't say much about it. It should premiere next year on Netflix, so look out for that. It's called, I can tell you what it's called. It's called.
Why don't we not tell people what it's called?
What it's called, but when it comes out, I'll make an announcement.
That's awesome. And I noticed, we discussed that you do some personal work on the side. I mean, we saw some of that in your reel, but you also said you're creating on the side and posting some stuff to Instagram right now. Can you talk about that work a little bit? Yeah,
recently I got into VJing. That's the visuals that you see in the background at like a rave or a nightclub. So I decided, yeah, I want to try doing that. So I've been making these little motion graphics loops. It looks like really neon, techno-y kind of effects. So that's something I've been doing on the side recently. I just have a few stuff on Instagram, but I plan to be posting more.
Awesome. We'll put your Instagram link in the YouTube information below, so definitely check that out. How'd you get into it? Was it just a personal inclination to just start trying those things, or did someone tell you, hey, I got this rave going on, can you create this for me?
Well, while I was in Montreal, I started going to a lot of raves. My friend invited me to a lot of raves, and she wants to be a DJ. I'm like, okay, cool, that's good for you. And then it was in November, I went to a rave, and I was really intrigued of the visuals that I was looking at. Everybody else is listening to the music, I'm watching the visuals. So I'm like, you know what? I want to do something like that. So that's actually what got me into making VJ loops.
That's awesome. And so you mentioned you're in Toronto now and you're working on a particular project that'll be on Netflix. Are you working within a studio right now, or are you freelancing?
I'm working, well, I'm working for the studio. I'm not currently in it because of the pandemic. But, but yes, I am working for a studio here in Toronto.
So let's talk about how you're working during the pandemic. I know, we're actually in your studio right now, so you can't actually show it, but you have all the equipment there, which is great, and it's terrific that you're working during the pandemic. How do you stay motivated right now? Are you on a set schedule, and how are you communicating with your colleagues?
Well, I mean, it's not that hard to stay motivated once you like what you're working on. So I like what I'm working on, so it's not a problem for me. But to stay connected with my colleagues, we use Microsoft Teams, and every Friday we have a big group chat to talk about anything that's not related to work or coronavirus. So we just talk about anything that comes to mind. And actually, next Sunday we have a beach party planned, so I definitely going to that.
That's awesome that you can stay in touch with everyone, and you're probably safer there in Canada than we are here. But I'm glad to hear that you're working during the pandemic. With this studio and with other studios you've been working at, I'm sure the audience would be interested to know your experience as a Black man working in this industry. I don't know if you faced any challenges with that, but if you could talk about your experience, I'm sure that would be of interest to people.
Well, I have heard of other people experiencing obstacles being a person of color, but for me, I have not personally experienced any challenges.
That's good to hear. Since, with working from home, even though, like you said, you're working with a studio but are not in the studio right now, do you see this being a change that could potentially happen going forward, where people are working from all around the world and not necessarily in the studio? Or do you think once this all gets better that we'll be going back into those studios?
Well, that's actually something that we talked about at work, because since we started doing remote work, we have not missed any deadlines. Like, we've been on track. So we're wondering, if we're all still on track and we're working from home, what's the point of going back to the studio? I mean, maybe some people might go back. I don't know, maybe like the supervisors or the people who have to be around each other. But me personally, like, my schedule has not really changed at all. But I guess that would be different for people with children to look after, who and a dog in the house and that kind of stuff. But for me, I'm fine.
Sure, that's great. I'd love to hear any advice now that you've been out of school for a few years and you've been really successful thus far, consistently working, which is so great to see. Do you have any advice for students or other people who are looking to get involved in this field or pursuing this line of work? And especially in light of the pandemic, I'm wondering, are there more jobs in animation right now? I've heard some rumor of that. Hopefully there's an abundance of projects since it's more difficult to film for live action, but any advice that you could offer would be terrific.
Well, my advice for others would be do not be afraid to apply anywhere, like absolutely anywhere in the world. When I first started, I was only applying to other places in New York. Then I expanded to other places in the US. And then after my second job, I applied to anywhere in the world. That's how I ended up in Canada. I have a friend who actually worked in Bangkok for a while. He just applied to everywhere. So that's my advice. Just apply anywhere, and just know that you don't have to stay where you're working forever. You can have a job in a different country, stay there for a few months, and then leave if you're just starting out.
And I've heard, there are several visual effects studios in Canada, both in Toronto and Vancouver. So it's great to see that you're willing to go to some far-flung places, even though Toronto's not necessarily that far. But I think that advice is outstanding, and we're really thrilled that you're working consistently. And when you can, let us know what the Netflix show you're working on is. Please put that on your Instagram so people will know about it. But I want to thank you so much, Kristen, and I wish you the best of luck and continued success. So thanks again, and we'll look forward to seeing more of your work soon. Bye now.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
I'd like to welcome Elena Briantes, a 2016 graduate of SVA's BFA Computer Art, Computer Animation, and Visual Effects program, whose thesis film, Awesome Adventure, created with Yana Pan, was shown in year 1 of SVA premieres. Since graduation, Elena has worked for the visual effects studio Framestore, where she served as a compositor on many commercials, including those from Microsoft, Nespresso, and Toyota, as well as on TV shows and films, including, most recently, I Know This Much Is True on HBO. So I'm very pleased to welcome Elena. Hey, Elena, how are you?
Hey, Adam, how's it going? Hello, fellow SVA people.
And the general public, anyone and everyone who wants to watch or hear, but special shout out to the SVA people watching. Thank you for being here. And speaking of SVA, I'd first love for you to tell us a little bit about your SVA experience as an undergrad.
Yeah. I think everyone has their own unique experience with art school. And I always say that's because you get what you put in. You know what I mean? And I realized that pretty early on. And what was unique to SVA to me was how close to opportunities you were constantly, with your professors being either full-time professionals, coming straight out of work to teach a class, or being close to equipment in BFA CAD, or even the film department where you can rent the top equipment, readily accessible. You always get the newest programs and everything like that. So you really had to play all your cards to be as efficient and really make the most of what is a really well-equipped school. And everyone is also having the same idea and the same path. So you're with people who are just as motivated as you to learn and use everything that's given to you.
And so you were a participant in year 1 of SVA premieres, and you got to go to Hollywood with us. How was that experience for you?
That was really cool. I didn't think that would be an opportunity ever. And like you said, it was year 1. So it was the first time, I guess, hearing of SVA wanting to send people out to LA specifically. Like, I'm an East Coast girl. I've been on the East Coast my whole life. Not to say that I've never been to the West Coast, but getting the opportunity to see the industry on the West Coast was like, here's, quite literally the other side of the country and how things are going there. Everyone's getting Ubers, there's cars, there's no subways. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. Everyone kind of having the glitter in their eyes. We got to tour Titmouse, I think. Titmouse, super awesome animation studio. They've been on my radar for a while, so it was really neat to get to go in and to meet those people. And yeah, I think it was a really great opportunity.
And so you actually walked into SVA premieres already having an internship, and I'm pretty certain that propelled you into your career, which has been pretty prolific over the past 4 years. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It prolific in the sense that, I've been with Framestore in New York for 4 years now. So it's been a very steady career, just kind of building relationships with my coworkers and with Framestore. They took me in as an intern pretty early on before graduation. I accepted the offer and been there ever since. It's been, and I'm still there to this day, working from home with Framestore. And even as I grow in my career at Framestore as a studio is also evolving. It used to be a film studio before I came in, and then they dropped film, started to be advertising exclusively, and now we have picked up, immersive VR stuff. We picked up episodics, so we're also doing TV as we speak. So as the studio grows, I am also growing with what the studio learns. So that's been really interesting.
That's great. You actually sent us the reel from Framestore, and quite a few SVA alumni work at Framestore. So I'm sure that even though this isn't specifically your work that we're going to show, some of it includes your work, and I'm sure some of it was touched by other SVA alumni. So we're going to show that, and we'll.
Yeah, so I unfortunately have not made or updated my reel in a few years, but Framestore has a much more professional and way more thorough advertising reel. And it should be noted that this is across all of their studios. So London, LA, New York, Chicago, Montreal, the works. So you see we do a lot of like really photoreal animals. And you know, our range of work is pretty phenomenal. There's the gecko. We all know that little guy. But yeah, speaking of the gecko, I would say he's probably one of my more one of the projects I've kind of grown up with. Like you know, it's common as a comp intern on Framestore or just, you know, other interns and juniors at Framestore. You slowly work your way up, and eventually you get introduced to the gecko, the Geico gecko, and getting to work on him is almost like a rite of passage. And eventually moving on to lead gecko commercials. Which then opens up leading other projects, which is really fun. But yeah.
Is there one project that you've worked on while at Framestore that you sort of loved working on beyond all others?
One recent one that we actually did while working from home was the Geico Rocket League spot. It's kind of funny. Rocket League's a video game by Psyonix, and I actually got the commercial while I was on Twitch watching some streams, and it was quite funny. But it was a lot of fun. It was fully 3D, which I enjoy working on as a compositor personally. So it was really cool. So that one I'm quite happy with. This is a Destiny 2 trailer, which is pretty neat. It was between LA and New York. That was a cool project.
Can you tell us a little bit about what a compositor does specifically?
Yeah, so a compositor, new compositor specifically, will take, it's like After Effects with nodes and on absolute steroids. The amount of detail that you can go into in Nuke is painful and terrifying, but it gives you so much control over an image. Compositing is the definition of, you know, taking two images and making a new image out of it. So, you know, all day we're adjusting pixels, we're keying green screens and putting in new backgrounds, set extensions. It's mainly 2D work. There will be occasionally, you know, 3D work if the effect is either more complicated, enhancing something within live action, or just creating a new environment entirely. So yeah, it really is just a world of possibility as a compositor. So it's a little, you know. Yeah.
How did you choose that track, and how did you choose to get involved in visual effects? Like, was that a choice when you went into SVA, or was it something you were working on in high school?
No. Well, yes and no. I didn't intentionally go to computer art with the intention of becoming a compositor. It was more of a fell into my lap kind of situation. I actually came into computer art, you know, having a love for video games and CGI and things like that, and just the fascination with visual effects in general. And thinking about it now, there were years of high school or middle school where I might have been on websites like DeviantArt or Tumblr, just, you know, making cool images in Photoshop, or just fan art, things like that. And I didn't realize that all those little instincts I was building using Photoshop in high school or middle school, it was like, wow, I'm still having those same instincts today in my professional career. And it's like, oh, that's pretty neat. That's neat to think about. It was always there, you know?
And you mentioned this when you were talking about the Geico commercial, that you did that from home. Can you tell us a little bit about working from home during the pandemic? Are we in your workstation right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So to preface, I play a lot of video games, hence like the huge headset and the, you know, decent microphone with like
I thought you were a
mobile mic.
podcaster. I wasn't sure.
It's on one or the other, but I play a lot of video games, so that involves like talking with a lot of my friends over programs like Discord. So I have a lot of monitors. If you can take a crack at how many I have currently, not counting the TV. How many do you
4?
think? Ooh, yeah, I actually have 4 monitors
Oh,
right
okay.
now.
So I could
Yeah.
tell it was more than the normal 2 or 3. So yeah.
Yeah. One of them's from work, granted, but when you say, "Oh, why do you need 3 monitors?" The answer is, well, of course I need them. What wouldn't I use them for? But yeah, so working from home has been interesting. It was definitely something to grow into. All of us from Bristol, New York, we're all fully remote. Some people, granted, now that things are a little bit better, some people can go in and out of the office to capacity, to a certain capacity rather. But it's been a growing pain that everyone was learning because we no one had predicted needing to work from home at the drop of a hat. So things like internet, equipment, just having a new sort of pipeline or not necessarily pipeline, but new habits. Being more communicative was super important. Having more precise notes when you're leaving comments on work that you finished for your supervisor to review, because you can't just go to your desk anymore and be like, oh, by the way, I changed this, this, and this. Like, you have to write
Sure.
that in and be sure that you're making things as easy as possible for someone else to pick up. Because we're, in our homes all the time. And it's quite funny, like I have my 4th monitor from work on a bookcase that just happens to be next to my desk. So it's clear that our New York apartments were not built to handle an extended battle station. But yeah.
How do you feel like it's relatively easy to stay motivated? Are you doing any sort of personal work when you have downtime?
Productivity has always been an interesting topic, or not topic, but interesting thing to navigate in working from home. And I think a lot of that is kind of compounded by how much easier it is for us to stay online all the time and on social media, especially. I recently heard a term that I think very accurately describes it, known as doom scrolling, where you are scrolling through Twitter and Instagram. Like, you just need, like, as humans, we're like fidgety creatures. We can't sit still for very long. So we are scrolling through Twitter and seeing all this news that is like not something you want to wake up to on a Monday. And it hurts. It hurts to see people out there suffering, and sorry to get a little serious for a moment, but I want to be open about this for anyone who thinks that, they shouldn't or feel like they can't, but it's okay to look for help at a time like this, especially, or even in normal circumstances. If you feel like your brain or your mental health is debilitating and you think no one around you can help you, well, hopefully someone can. It's okay to look for help and look for a therapist, especially if it affects your daily life, like it was affecting, just motivation, as you said, to work, to getting out of bed is hard now.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard, and that's okay. And I was able to find a therapist with some diligent Google searching. Always do your research, but it's okay. But it's okay to talk about it, and I want people to be like, more accepting of mental health problems. And if you're not productive because you're doom scrolling and life sucks, that's okay. We're here. You're not alone.
I think it's a great point that you make. I think a lot of us, especially those who might not be working, or even those who were at the beginning of the pandemic, or even still, it is very difficult. So, you mentioned that you do have personal work that you don't necessarily show, but has that helped you get through this time, creating your own work on the side?
Yes, absolutely. As someone who's prone to just making something, whether it's food or just a simple drawing, something that has been keeping me social and keeping me in touch with my friends and people I love has been Dungeons and Dragons. And if anyone asks me about Dungeons and Dragons, it's really hard to get me to just stop talking. Like, you see me on the video, I'm literally drinking out of a tankard right now. But Dungeons and Dragons changed my life, TLDR. And it gives me a lot of opportunity to create, like draw characters or draw even like little fantasy maps and things like that. There's a never ending source of inspiration that has really been so much fun to continue and has been really great for my own mental health. And you know, it's just fun. Rolling dice is fun.
Has that been something you've been into for a long time, or did you discover it pretty recently?
I discovered it probably at the beginning of like 2018, 2019, maybe.
Okay.
But it's just something that you can do anywhere. You can do it out in the woods. You can do it with pen and paper. You can do it online. Yeah, it's such an accessible game, and it has such a large community that it's hard to miss out, I guess.
That's great. So, you know, as part of the doom scrolling, some of the issues of the day revolve around working in the industry and, you know, issues that both women and people of color face working in the Hollywood industry, whether it's in film, animation, or like you in visual effects. Being both a woman and a person of color, can you speak to any challenges you faced, or has your experience been relatively good thus far?
I will say everyone's experience is individual, but that also doesn't mean you shouldn't believe them. And my personal experience, not like this goes beyond Framestore. I would say, and I'm a pretty self-preserving person. So naturally, like, I say it's okay to protect yourself in situations. If you don't think that you can handle, or not handle, but if you don't think that you would be safe putting yourself out there, like, it's okay to protect yourself from, you know, people who might be abusive or might take advantage of you, or just undercut you. Like, it's okay to say no to things like that. It's okay to say, you know, that's not for me. And it's up to you to surround yourself with people that you trust and people who will uplift you and listen to your voice. There have been several instances where, you know, I might get invited out to drinks or peer pressure to, like, you know, follow this idea or that idea or hang out with these people. And, you know, I don't trust them sometimes or that, you know, situation. So I didn't feel bad saying, you know, no, I'm not putting myself in that situation. I'm protecting myself because there, you know, things can get ugly. So it's, how do I end this thought? It's not the end of the world if you say no to opportunities where you think you're undercutting yourself to put yourself, you know, in what you might think be a better position, but might hurt in the end, you know?
No, I think it's a great point that you make. You know, and you've already given a lot of good advice thus far. Is there anything else that you'd want to say to students, you know, especially right now, if you're not already aware, SVA is going virtual this fall. As students who are entering SVA as freshmen, or as students who are, you know, about to exit as seniors, who are looking to get involved in this field, do you have any other advice that you want to posit?
Yeah, one thing that has always been consistent, not only with art school or at work, but with, you know, outside and personal relationships and things like that, you should always be someone, you should never think that you're the smartest person in the room. I think, you know, even if you're, you know, if you got 40 years on your belt and it's just you and an intern in a room, you're still not the smartest person in the room. You know, that intern can teach you something. Well, maybe it would be cool if they could, but, you know, you don't want to assume that, and that goes along the lines of ego or just being able to help people. Like, if a freshman raises their hand in class, or comes to you, like, I've had situations in SVA where it's a super collaborative environment. Anyone can pop into different labs and ask, hey, what's up? You know, I'll be a senior in the senior labs, and someone like a junior or sophomore might come in and be like, hey, Elena, I have a nuke question. Can you come show me that thing? And I'm like, yeah, sure. That sounds awesome. I'd be happy to help you. Because it's if you are willing to help someone, you're only putting in better energy and better quality of work, better people into the industry. You know, you're paying it forward, and you're only improving the community by doing that.
That's great. I mean, you've offered a bundle of sage advice and wisdom. I think it's so cool, and the work that you're doing is really interesting. We've seen quite a few of your colleagues who've graduated in your year and in the subsequent years following that. And as someone who's not a visual effects artist, it's so neat to see. And it's funny because we don't know all the work. People who aren't in visual effects don't know all the work that goes into it, but we see it all across our daily life, whether it be in commercials like that you work on, or in films and television. So it's very cool to talk to people in the industry, and I appreciate your insight, and I'm thrilled that you've been working consistently since graduation. And I want to thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Adam. I know we touched on, you know, some things that will get people thinking, but I hope everyone is staying safe, and you guys as well are staying safe and healthy. And I hope SVA has a super successful, you know, issues barred, successful virtual fall semester.
Well, we hope so too. Thank you very much, and we hope to hear from you soon.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thanks so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this Q&A, and hope you'll check out our other after-school special videos on the School of Visual Arts' YouTube channel. Thank you for your interest in and support of SVA and its alumni, and for your support of the arts in general. Stay safe, stay healthy, and be well.